Okay, I guess we'll get started. Hi, everybody. This is Dean Woodbeck from InCommon and Internet 2, and thank you for joining us for the Collaboration Success Program webinar. We'll give you a little overview of the program, plans for 2021, and then we have a couple of current CSP participants who will talk about their experience. So I will turn it over now to our moderator for today, Keith Wessel from the University of Illinois. Keith?
Thank you, Dean, and welcome to the Collaboration Success Program webinar. Just in terms of introductory information here, I will say if you have questions as we go along today, please feel free to put those into the Zoom chat. If it fits in with the discussion, the flow of the presentation, we'll go ahead and try to interject it right then, and if it doesn't, we'll try to get to it at the end.
You know, Keith, that reminds me, I forgot one thing. In terms of the chat, there's a chat button at the bottom of your screen, everybody, and you'll notice that the default is to send in a message to all panelists. So if you would click on that, there's a drop-down menu, and we want you to send it to everybody. So if you're posting questions in the chat, if you could remember that, that would be helpful. And you have to click on that chat button in order to see it. So sorry, Keith, go ahead.
No, good catch. Yeah, we want everyone to see the questions so we don't have 5 people asking the same question. So good catch, thank you. So with no further ado, I'm gonna give a little bit of overview of things here before I hand things off to our excellent CSP presenters who are going to tell you what this program has done for them. For starters, if you're wondering a little bit about what this CSP thing is and what some of the benefits are, the benefits are many and plentiful. It's a great chance to collaborate with your peers, like-minded folks who are working on similar projects and learn from one another. And it also has the amazing advantage that it gives you priority access to the subject matter experts who can help you speed things along and work over those humps faster. So you have a chance to work through your challenges with both the folks who know the software inside and out, as well as your peers who might be working through similar challenges right now. And yeah, between the two, chances are you're going to get your problem solved pretty fast. You're going to have a first shot at some of the training workshops, and you'll continue to get discounts even after the program, lifetime discounts for the training. And one of my favorites from this slide is get stuff done. I'm all about getting stuff done. Faster, better, together. I think that sums up the program perfectly. And then if you need one more reason, hey, it's a great way to make some friends, both around the country and around the world, which these days we need all the friends we can get. So what all does this program incorporate? So those are great benefits, but that's not going to help you if the solutions aren't for you. Chances are at least one of these solutions is for you. If you're working on access management, if you're working on scholarly collaborations, or managing all those guest users and getting them access, or maybe just your overall user lifecycle, central person registry and the ins and outs and the affiliations, those are the areas that this program will help you in. And chances are all of you are doing something in at least one of those areas, if not all of those areas. The InCommon, I love this InCommon Academy. It makes it sound so auspicious. The InCommon Academy training portfolio is the products that we're looking at here. You'll see the grouper, co-manage, Shibboleth, and the newer, relatively newer player to the game, Midpoint, all working together. And that is how those 4 areas are accomplished, and that is what this training is all about. And speaking of the training, here's the roadmap for the upcoming training. Note subject to change, and also note that in just a couple of weeks, there is some Midpoint training coming up. Not too late to sign up for that. And other things, there's also the first round of online Shibboleth training coming up in the near future. Still getting things finalized for that. and some other things coming up in the fall training-wise. I should mention, by the way, in terms of the training, that participants in the CSP get 4 seats, which they can divide up any way they want. If you want to send 4 people to one training, or if you want to send one person to each of 4 different trainings, or if you just want to train yourself to death, you can attend all 4, but you get 4 seats included in the program. So that all wraps into pulling this InCommon Academy into the CSP. We've already been through a couple rounds of the CSP, and this screen contains the logos of all of our distinguished alumni, in addition to University of Illinois. Oh, wait, we're distinguished too, I'm sorry. And so if you want to see who all's been involved, if you know some folks from those schools and feel like reaching out on the side to ask some questions about what they thought of the program, here's the list. And we've got a couple fun quotes here too from some alums of what they thought of the program, just for you to take a gander at here. I'm a big fan of the going to the gym quote. And I would totally agree that, yeah, the support you get out of this program runs circles around anything that I've seen out of a vendor. So the program roadmap for upcoming things, just a couple things to highlight here. Expressing your initial interest, that needs to be done by the end of July. I'll be talking more about that at the end of the webinar today. And then all the introductory stuff will be happening here prior to January, and then you'll actually start doing the work together after the first of the year. So that's how the program is going to shape up in a nutshell. Some more on next steps and such later in the webinar, but right now I'm going to get out of the way and hand things over to Randy so he can talk about some of the awesome stuff that CSP did for his school.
Thanks, Keith. Good morning, everybody. I want to make sure you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, sounds great. So my name is Randy Metke, and I'm the manager of middleware and IAM at Colorado State University. And I'd like to start with a little bit of background about our CSP project. So at CSU, university network IDs enter an expiration cycle when a person is no longer affiliated with the university. And eventually, those IDs expire and no longer allow a person to access university systems. Well, we have multiple services on campus that alumni and friends of CSU use on an infrequent basis. And so those students are Donor Connect, which is our giving site, FamWeb, which is our parent portal, RAM Records, which delivers records and transcripts to former CSU students. And we also have a vet teaching hospital on campus that collaborates with community veterinarians through an online portal. And many of the people that access these services don't have an active university ID. So each of those services needed those people to access those services, and they were all providing a local credential store, which was separate for each application. So when that was put in place, there was a project that was handed to us from our advancement office and said, these are the things that we would like to happen. So those turned into our CSP project and those project goals that are in front of you at this point in time. So first one was to provide authentication for these services. And the next thing was to replace that local credential store. We thought by doing that and using a single source of authentication, and in this case, using a social identity provider to allow for people to access the service, we would improve the user experience, we'd improve security on those sites, and we'd cut down on help desk calls. We also needed a central person or entity registry for that external population. One of the project goals was to be able to create a unique identifier for people that didn't have an active CSU identity that could be used across applications and authorize and verify a person's identity, making the user experience a little bit better and making decisions that systems made a little more well informed. So we had the central person registry requirement, and then that central person registry, being that we were going to use social identity accounts, we knew that people logged in with more than one identity provider. So someone may log in one day with a Facebook credential, then the next day with a Microsoft credential. So we needed a system that would do account linking for those multiple external identity providers. And then moving on to the next slide here, we chose to use these solutions from the Trusted Access Platform. So co-manage was a perfect fit in the sense that it had an entity registry, it could do account linking, and it could also create that unique identifier. We had grouper in place. It was, we already had that in an early phase of production at CSU, and it was going to handle management of access policies and service eligibility. And then for messaging tasks, we were going to use RabbitMQ. And next slide, please. So this project that we put together kind of looks like this. And I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail here, but instead I'll offer a quick overview. In the process flow, what we were looking at was the ability to create a real-time access to any of these applications, or be able to get an invitation that was sent to a person to access a particular system. And we use both of those methods today. So in the real-time kind of process, a user attempts to access the actual resource. And what they do is they authenticate to their social identity provider. Like I say, it could be Microsoft or Facebook. And we use the Cirrus Identity Social DisaML Gateway to handle that kind of traffic. So when that's done, what happens is there's a SAML assertion that is posted back to the service providers. And things that are included in that assertion are the person's name, email address, and a unique identifier that's created from the developer account we used for each of those identity providers, and then the service, which we used as a proxy that marries those things together. The end application looked for an ID match, and if they saw an ID match, it queried our LDAP directories where we provisioned this information. If it found a match, they'd authorize the user and allow access to the service. And if there was no identity match, what would happen is it would kick off an identity verification process. And our registrar's office owns an identity verification process for former students or applicants or anyone that ever had a CSU ID, which is our university system identifier. And University Advancement also has an advance ID that they provide to their user base. So when there wasn't a match in LDAP, either of those systems would kick off a process to help verify the identity of that person, which has been very successful. And then after that, when the person's identity was verified, that would create a registry record. And then the account would be provisioned. So the end application would kick it off to the message broker. We have a listener on the other end, and it pulls that in and then does all the provisioning to all of the right places. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so, thinking about why Colorado's decided to join the Collaboration Success Program, our very first goal, even before we joined the CSP, was to modernize our identity and access management strategy. We had been using a system that was, custom engineered in 2000 and had been updated as time went along. But we knew that we could probably do better. And the tools in the Trusted Access Platform were all getting very mature and allowed us to, utilize an identity stack that was, designed really for higher education and would do more things for us. And so that was our first goal. And the things I'd like to point out about what you get by being a CSP member is that, you get very solid products, and they're pretty well tuned, and the support that we've received, both community and through things like Slack channels have been excellent. I can't tell you, the peer interaction is so very important with these systems, and it's been a real benefit to us at CSU. So community support, certainly. Subject matter experts, that was another key. With our initial grouper implementation, we realized that we needed, after talking to people at one of the CSP face-to-face meetings, we were talking about how our grouper instance was structured, and how it ought to be structured. We ended up making some adjustments, which has actually made our processes better and streamlined some of our processes. So subject matter experts, absolutely. And then the technology training piece of this. I had just hired 2 new people this last year to help with a project that we're putting together, which is creating identity and access management for the Colorado State University systems. So we're bringing in external institutions into our identity environment. And with that, what we're doing is we're putting Midpoint in place now to add to our Shibboleth and Grouper and co-manage applications. Anyway, that training was invaluable because I hired 2 new people, needed to get them up to speed quickly. They both of those people took Midpoint training. One took co-managed training, the other took Grouper training, and another one of my team members took Shibboleth training as well. So that's been real beneficial for Colorado State and for me personally, because I really get to benefit from that. Another important piece of this is that, projects that were started in the CSP, I think they've helped make the people starting to use these tools clearer, the direction is clearer. So I know a lot of the activities from our experience with the CSP, there were groups working on documentation and best practices. All of those are highly useful. And so, the people that take part in this program actually end up benefiting themselves and other people to follow using these tools. So I think that's a really important aspect as well. As a matter of fact, one I'll point out is Matt Brookover is from Minds is running a group that is looking at banner and Midpoint integration, which is a really important activity for a lot of schools who are considering Midpoint. And then we've always been able to get advice from the Slack channel. I know we've scheduled meetings with Keith Hazelton and others from Internet to help guide our implementations. And we just put into production for our CSU Pueblo campus faculty and staff. We just put in the first phase of that project in the month of May. And so it's live for us. And really, without some of that help from the community and, in all pieces of our architecture, we really would have been further behind now if we hadn't had the touch points with this group and the people who run these programs. So that's Colorado State University's story. And with that, I'd like to hand the next part of this presentation off to Lacey Vickery at UNC Charlotte. So, Lacey.
Hey everyone, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. I was getting some sort of spotty sound, so I want to make sure I'm good. Yes, so we joined the CSP this year to implement Grouper. Initially, our goal was a little bit larger than that, but we kind of scaled it back to be Grouper specifically because we knew that that was a piece that was missing from our overall IAM infrastructure on campus. And one of the reasons was we had various scripts that were maintained by different groups on campus and populated groups in Active Directory. The Active Directory administrators were really wanting to get people out of AD managing groups through ADUC and different tools and kind of get a handle on that, since with AD access, pretty much anyone can read anything in there. So that was one of the objectives. And we already had Shibboleth on campus and we were very familiar with that and had great success implementing it. So we were just looking at other InCommon products and discovered the Collaboration Success Program. And it's been really great. It's helped us get Grouper going. But our main goal was to kind of get a handle on access control for different service providers and applications on campus. And we had certain scenarios, like GitHub was an example, and there are others too, where license seats were taken for anyone who could authenticate. So we didn't have a really good way to hold, to know who all was taking up a license, because as long as they were an active user, they were getting a license seat. And we also wanted to make sure that certain deprovisioning was happening when people would leave or were no longer staff or faculty or fit a certain role, that they would drop out of access to these applications. So the goal for the Collaboration Success Program with Shibboleth was to implement the policy enforcement point access control model specifically, which is where Shibboleth would block access and not even let someone in the application if they weren't a member of a certain group, and we would use Grouper to provision those groups. So that was our goal at the beginning. And next slide, please. And so through the Collaboration Success Program, like they've touched on so far, we had access to the subject matter experts, which helped us get Grouper going in what I feel like is an accelerated timeline compared to what it would have taken had we just sort of struggled through these things on our own. I would mention that we also, as part of this, implemented a person registry. It's going to become a much bigger part of the whole university IAM system, but for now it's mostly feeding Grouper, but we didn't really have something in place other than AD. So part of the project was to also implement the person registry, and we just were playing around with doing that with Midpoint, and that's worked out really well for this too. And we also, as part of this, we're kind of new to Docker, so the CSP tools are implemented with Docker now, or rolled out with Docker. And that was a little bit of a learning process, but the community was there to help us through that. And I think that's a very good tool to have moving forward to help streamline installation of these various services across campus. And I know we'll be using it heavily for other services too, not just the InCommon software. So eventually, yeah, we hope to have all the applications in Grouper where we can use it to really get an overview of what's going on campus, maybe provision attributes, all the good things that Grouper can provide, and doing group math and deprovisioning and provisioning out to target systems, and hopefully getting everyone out of Banner as our central repository, which is what we're currently doing. And that's why part of this registry is to move people out of Banner and down the road. so I think I mentioned that, yeah, we're also looking at midpoint. Okay, next slide. And this is just kind of an overview of where we are now. I don't know if you can see all that, but currently Banner is our central person registry, and we end up having to put a lot of different users in Banner who don't necessarily meet the needs or wouldn't normally be in Banner if we had a better sort of way to handle that. Alumni, or we're starting to have affiliations with community colleges around the Charlotte area. And we're having to stick those users in Banner who may or may not ever become students or faculty staff. They're just sort of loosely affiliated. So part of our long-term project is to get away from using Banner as our sole source of identity, and it would just be a downstream system. And obviously Grouper being a big part of that. Provisioning groups and access control to the various systems on campus. As far as, is there, I think, one more slide or? Yeah, this is kind of what I touched on. So we'll eventually move away to having the central registry provisioning down and Banner just being one of the downstream systems for that, moving sponsored guests and various guests out of Banner. So as far as what I think was useful, definitely access to the subject matter experts, and the Slack channel has been really helpful, just getting community feedback, seeing how other people have implemented Grouper, and even to the point where certain issues that were very specific to our environment, because we are pretty new with Docker, they've been super helpful in rolling in changes to the Docker images that we suggested, or documentation or ways that things could be streamlined. They're very receptive to making changes to help all the schools that need it. And even very specific infrastructure issues that came up, they've been able to help us work through that. So yeah, I would say it's been a success. We didn't, because of issues that came up mostly with COVID, we held off on moving to production, but we've actually been able to flush things out and test a lot more. So in a way, I think we got even more time to see how things are going to run and make sure that we have everything set for production. And I mean, I think that I've pretty much touched on everything. That was my last slide, I believe, so I can hand it back.
All right, Randy and Lacey, both of you, thank you for sharing your own experiences. Excellent stuff, and some good points there. You might already be Shibboleth or co-manage or grouper or midpoint institution, and maybe you just want to take that to the next step, to the next level. Then this program could help. And Lacey also mentioned Dockerizing, containerizing software. If you haven't done anything with that, that's a big learning curve, and there can be a lot of context shifting in getting everything working in a containerized world. So maybe your goals are to just take your existing software and make it more robust and in a DevOps flow with containerized software. This program can help with that too. These components and their packages are all free, but the support and the networking and the collaboration and the training make it all totally worthwhile. So with that said, and Dean, thank you for sharing that link in the chat. By the way, the chat has been ominously silent otherwise so far. So you could be the first person to ask a question. If you have one, please speak up over there in the chat. But in the meantime, if you want to learn some more about the program, there's the link that Dean sent over there, of course. The next step, if you want to talk about getting on board with this program with Internet 2 staff, then the first step is to complete the expression of interest form. You'll see the link there on that slide. You'll fill that out, And then you'll have a meeting with some of the program coordinators to talk about your plans and make sure that your plans are aligning well with the program. Thank you, Dean. Of course, if you want to review the training opportunities, they're all linked there. Those training opportunities are for anyone in the community, but again, 4 seats are included in the program for anyone who participates. And if you want to learn more about just the overall program, I think that's the link Dean put up there. The fee, spoiler alert, is $25,000, which if you think about that, if you think about $25,000 for a consultant and what you might get with that, and how much further this can go with all the training opportunities and what you learn coming out of it and the networking opportunities, it really makes that $25,000 seem like not a big deal at all. And that is just to help Internet 2 cover the costs of the training and the, any program activities getting you and the other program participants together. And of course, if you have other questions after the webinar today, you can reach out to InCommon staff at the link or the email address on this slide. Given that, do we have any questions from our participants today? I'm going to pause and just see if anyone has been poised to hit the enter key. And while we're poised, I guess, Erin, who is lurking on the call, do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you got it all. Thank you. You did a great job.
I wanted to ask both Randy and Lacey, if you were starting over with this program today, I think one challenge is figuring out what type of goals are realistic to fit into this window. And yes, the program staff is great at helping you scope things appropriately, but if you were starting things over, what kind of questions and things would you be thinking about going into this to scope things to accomplish the goals that you set out to do? It sounds like most of you, or both of you, came pretty close to doing what you set out to do in that time frame. But what kind of things should people be thinking about if they're thinking about joining the program?
I'll go. So, you know, I guess my advice is to keep what your project looks like manageable. I think we were successful in being able to implement our solution, and I know that we had some of the pieces in place already for that solution. Ultimately, and many of you are probably aware that things always take more time than you think they will. And by keeping the project, the goal of the project doable and smaller, you know, you will have some success for that project. And that success, you know, one of the things that was good for Colorado State was it made our identity activity an official project with the administration. And that got the ball rolling. We had limited success before the CSP in being able to move our identity environment forward. But with the CSP project, and then the steps after the CSP project to help drive modernizing our identity environment, that was really helpful. And it allowed us to look at our long-term goals and put a good strategy together that we felt that was solid. And one of the other things I'll mention here is that by aligning our identity practices with this solution and really the people who have worked within the CSP program, you know, when you're looking for people, not that I'm saying people go other places, but when you're looking for new hires and people that can fill jobs in your environment, if you have a similar solution that's a community-based solution that others are familiar with, that's also really valuable. You know, with our legacy solution, That wasn't possible. Everybody had to explore and research and look at the documentation that was there. So this is really a great opportunity.
Well, Lacey, what do you think? What should people be thinking about based on your experience if they're wanting to scope something to fit into this program?
I would say most, for us, the big thing was staff resources. And I know that's an issue for everyone, but I was actually able, I normally work on Shibboleth, but I was able to focus most of my time on getting groupers set up and everything that entailed, including Docker and these various issues and things that I wasn't as familiar with. But if you only have maybe one or two staff that only have 20 or 30% of their time committed to the project, that might be an issue. So before you, or just to make sure that it's scoped properly, depending on the amount of staff you have to work on it. That was probably what I would say the biggest thing would be. And I do agree with Randy too, that having just a common set of tools that work, very university focused IAM solution is we see that as being a big benefit moving forward. We kind of had a mixture of open source InCommon products like Shibboleth, but we also had vendor software. We were using OpenIDM, and the vendor solutions just don't really account for a lot of the issues that higher ed has. So I think our long-term goal moving everything to the InCommon set of IAM tools will just help standardize across hopefully all the institutions in the UNC system, or just all over. It does make the integration easier in just a common set of products and terminology. So that would be my 2 cents, I guess.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, the staffing resources can be a challenge, but I'll also point out, speaking from Illinois' experience in the first round of the CSP, it helps you, it holds you accountable because you have other peers who are waiting to see what you're doing and waiting to see how you're doing. And so it forces you to say, I'm going to take these next several months and this is what I'm going to accomplish. So although the staffing resources can be a challenge, it also forces you to be a little more intentional with those staffing resources. So that's something to keep in mind. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because it reminded me of that. So all right, the chat remains quiet, so I'm going to assume we've told everyone everything they need to know. Aaron or Dean, any final thoughts that I've left out?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered it well. If anybody wanted to find out more, if you don't find it on the links, you can certainly contact me directly. Or just hit the help@incommon.org and that will get funneled to me. If you're on Slack, you can find me there, or you can drop me an email at emirtha@internet2.edu. So we hope that we'll have some of you guys in the program with us.
Yeah, and there's Erin's email address. So now everyone can send her friendly notes to tell her how much they enjoyed the webinar today. I guess with that, I hope that many of you go forth and become the future CSP alums. Good luck with all of your implementations, and thanks for attending today, and have a great rest of your day.